Liat proposes salary freeze among measures to put the airline, on a sustainable path. Now that's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for today, Tuesday, October 30th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Cash-strapped Liat is proposing a salary freeze for its employees for the next 3 years, as well as agreement on a proposal that future salary increases would be dependent on employee performance and the profitability of the company. There is also a proposal that the unions accept a revision of job descriptions in keeping with modern airline operations and the implementation of an appraisal system over the next 6 months. Those proposals form the basis of a discussion that took place in Antigua on Tuesday between the airline and regional trade union representatives as they discussed the future of the airline, whose major shareholders are the governments of Antigua and Barbados, Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Last week, the shareholders met in St. Vincent to discuss the airline's future. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who is the chairman of the shareholder governments, said a decision was taken to establish a technical committee which presented a report regarding aviation in the Eastern Caribbean sub-region with an emphasis on Liat. He said recommendations about possible options were made and one was considered the most viable. Gonsalves did not say what that was, but indicated it was not a private sector overtake or closing the airline and starting a new one. Liat's chief executive officer, Julie Reefer-Jones, told the trade unions in a letter that if the airline is to remain sustainable, it would require all stakeholders to support the changes. The CEO said the airline is not in a position to meet its ongoing obligations to employees and suppliers, and the current situation requires urgent attention. Trinidad and Tobago's National Security Minister Stuart Young says lawmen already have several leads as they investigate death threats against police officers involved in a shooting that led to the deaths of 5 men last week. He made the disclosure as he joined Police Commissioner Gary Griffith in warning that threats on the lives of law enforcement officers will not be taken lightly.
You know, this type of mischief, this type of attempt to instill fear in our law enforcement officers, it is not something that is going to be tolerated, and we are going to utilize all of our resources in the fight against this type of behavior.
Last week, police shot and killed 5 men in Laventille after they say they were fired upon. On the weekend, the police service said it received threats of bombs being planted at police stations across the country. Today, Minister Young said law enforcement is close to finding the perpetrators.
I don't want to say too much more with respect to it. It is currently under investigation and we have some good leads. So I expect us to be able to tackle that particular incident head on.
Young spoke at the opening ceremony for the Adolescent Drug Intervention Training Workshop in Port of Spain. He also told reporters that an investigation was launched into a viral video involving armed men firing shots into the air, asking the Police Commissioner Gary Griffith whether he's ready for war. Having received a copy of the video, Young said it was put into the hands of law enforcement agencies for an investigation, and it was determined that it originated from another country. The video emerged following the death threats made against the officers, and Minister Young said it has instilled fear in the minds of citizens, with threats also being made on the lives of prison officers. Minister Young assured that added security was on the way.
The procurement process for the stab vests, these are stab vests for prison officers while they're working in the confines of prison. Those have actually been procured and they're on their way. I'm hoping that we should get delivery very soon. The number of vests that were ordered, it takes some time.
Minister Young also said the issue of handguns for prison officers are currently being examined. He gave little details about the use of body cameras for police officers, only saying they were on the agenda and had to be procured.
That report was from Ria Rambali of CNC3 News. Well, a week before Antiguans and Barbudans vote in a referendum on whether to replace the London-based Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Appeal, an opinion poll has found that most citizens approve of the switch. The poll released Tuesday and conducted by the Barbados-based Caribbean Development Research Services, Inc., CADRES, found that 62% of 800 people polled during the October 12th to 14th period supported making the Trinidad-based CCJ the island's final court, either now or in the future. For the referendum to succeed, a 66.6% yes vote is required. 17% of those polled said they did not support the move, and 22% preferred not to say how they felt. Cadre said the poll was devoted to exploring the referendum issue and sought to understand how Antiguans felt about the CCJ in principle and also how they planned to vote on November 6th. Among those who supported the CCJ, the most compelling reason was the suggestion that the court was cheaper to access, while those who opposed it thought it would be more open to political influence. Cadres noted that the views of Barbadians were not canvassed in this face-to-face survey because of the timeline for completion of the poll. Well, on set with us to discuss the findings of the poll is Director of Cadres, Peter Wickham. Peter, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Now, are you surprised by the results that you got?
Yeah, no, we weren't surprised largely because they were consistent with the last poll we did in 2016, which was before the election, and it found that there was a similar level of support for the poll. The 67%, somewhere around there is, we could say it's literally a razor thin on the actual success in terms of the 2/3 majority. But it doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room, and it also doesn't allow for the margin of error to be taken into consideration.
And is the poll reflective of the existing political configuration in Antigua and Barbuda?
To some extent, both Grenada and Antigua, interestingly enough, have 59%. The government has 59% support. But you would need to appeal to around 10% of the remaining people in order to win a referendum. And in the case of Antigua, it appears as though there are some supporters of the UPP that are inclined to vote in favor of the referendum. But what I found in the actual breakdowns is that most of the people who don't support it are also supporters of the UPP. So there is a political relationship, which is unfortunate because we like to think of these polls as being entirely without political reason. This is the referendum, both in Grenada and Antigua. But clearly there is some political influence because people who are not supporting the government are inclined not to support the poll. But they only really need 10% of them, as well as the support of all people who voted in favor of the ABLP.
Well, you mentioned Grenada earlier, and we know that Grenada will be holding their referendum, similar referendum, on the same day, November 6th. Apart from the same date that they're holding the referendum, would you say that there are any other parallels?
Yeah, I mean several. I think the fact that in both instances you're dealing with very strong governments, 59% popular support in both instances, it says a lot. In Grenada, they have all the seats. In Barbuda, in Antigua and Barbuda, there's all but one. And I think in both instances the oppositions are hurt. And in both instances the oppositions have used this as an opportunity to demonstrate that they do have some power. The opposition initially in Antigua took a mature position that they were supporting it. In the case of Grenada, I don't believe the NDC has ever actually taken a firm position.
Yes, they have.
Or they have taken a position in support of it.
They announced their position, I think, sometime either late September, early October. Somewhere in that window, they announced that they are in support of the referendum.
Yeah, thing is that I heard...
Actually, they were asking that it be delayed. They said they supported it, but they were concerned that it was being held, as they say, too soon. They needed to have some more time, but they supported it.
Because I was hearing talk about the idea of having the referendum, and they were saying there were other issues that they wanted brought into it. And that was my concern, that I think that there is an opportunity here, or there seems to be an inclination here on the part of the opposition to mix the issues up. And I wonder whether that was happening in Grenada, but I am happy to hear you say that, as a person from Carriacou yourself, that there is support. Yeah.
Peter, as always, much pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. Over in Montserrat, the motion of no confidence against the government of Premier Donaldson Romeo was defeated Monday after all 5 government legislators voted to keep the 4-year-old administration in office. Political observers had expected former Agriculture Minister Claude Hogan, who was fired by Romeo last year, to vote in support of the opposition, but he did not. Opposition member Dr. Ingrid Buffon who had tabled the motion against the government of which she was once a member, said she wished the ruling People's Democratic Movement well in the next year in office, but she cautioned Montserratians to vote wisely next time around and not make the same mistake. Premier Romeo had dismissed the arguments made against his government by the opposition as he defended his tenure in office. And still to come in Caribbean Newsline, a police officer in Barbados charged with more than a dozen counts of burglary. The details after the break.
It's one of the most anticipated events of the year. November 4, get ready for Latin Festival at Freddie Bay Lawn starting at 3 p.m. Featuring out of Puerto Rico, Sun Divas. Out of Sweet Sugar Sonic St. Kitts, DJ Elvis. From Jamaica, Romain Virgo. And out of Dominican Republic, El Alpha El Jefe. Get your tickets now at Cajola Cristal Limited, online at latinfestival.net. Avalon Lab in the Sands Complex for only $35 EC until October 28 and $55 after. At Uncle Fats, you can get your VIP tickets for only $320 EC until October 15 and $350 after. Limited amount available. Save the date, November 4. Get ready for Latin Fiesta. Sponsored by Cajola Cristata, Hobson Enterprise, St. Kitts Marriott Resort, Caribbean Cinemas, Stag, and Mojitos La Casa de Albano.
Preview. Preview. Preview.
My keen eye and 18 rock bass later tell me that this place is loaded with rock bass.
Well, I can assure you, rock bass are not on today's menu. However, I wouldn't mind a bag of Reese's Pieces right about now. Madfish, phone home.
A small guy. A pickle, awesome. Just what I've always wanted for Christmas.
We continue in Barbados, where a police constable has been charged with 14 offences and remanded to prison. 30-year-old Derwayne Cumberbatch, who is on suspension, pleaded guilty to 13 counts of burglary and 1 count of being equipped to commit a crime. We get more in this CBC TV8 news report.
A psychiatric assessment and pre-sentencing report have been ordered for the 30-year-old police constable of around the town St. Peter. It's alleged that on 13 different occasions, starting in September last year, the officer trespassed on the premises of several businesses, all in the Speightstown area, taking more than $12,000 worth of cash and merchandise. Prosecutor Janice Eiffel says not all of the property was recovered. She says the accused is the police officer, and they're all very serious matters and should be dealt with accordingly. Mr. Cumberbatch was then asked if there was anything he wanted to say. Standing in the dock, dressed in a grey dress shirt and grey slacks, he apologized first to the Commissioner of Police and the members of the force before apologizing to the business places affected. It was at that point that his attorney, Arthur Holder, asked that the lawman, who had previously been sent for counseling, be remanded to the psychiatric hospital so that his mental state could be determined prior to sentencing. Magistrate Wanda Blair, however, suggested that these reports could all be done while he's on remand. He will return to court on December 10th.
The family of slain St. Lucian native Botham Jean, who was shot in his own apartment by a white police officer, has filed a lawsuit against the city of Dallas. We get the details in this HTS News Force report.
The federal lawsuit filed against the District of Texas blames Dallas officer Amber Geiger, the police department, and the city for the wrongful death of 26-year-old Dallas resident and St. Lucian national Botham Jean. The suit was filed last week in northern Texas by parents Allison and Bertram Jean and has no specified dollar amount. It alleges that Geiger showed signs of being a dangerous and violent person based on a prior shooting of an unarmed suspect of color and pictures that Geiger allegedly reposted on her Pinterest account.
She brags about her propensity for violence. She brags about the use of deadly force. In doing so, she violated departmental procedures.
The suit claims that the Dallas Police Department has a pattern, practice, history and custom of using excessive force against minorities. It names Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall and Dallas City Council as failing to provide excessive force training to Geiger and implement policies that respected just constitutional rights.
The mayor, the city council, the police chief, who are responsible for training those officers and who are responsible for disciplining them when they're engaged in misconduct.
The Dallas Police Department, city and Geiger's lawyer declined comment. The lawsuit argues that better training by the Dallas Police Department could have prevented Jer's death.
The family is hoping that a significant punitive judgment will cause the city of Dallas itself to begin to reconsider the policies that it has.
Other accusations in the suit includes detectives sought warrants for Jer's apartment specifically to find evidence of illegality, and police officers anonymously told media outlets information to try and cast Geiger in the best light and create a narrative for a favor. The federal lawsuit may be put on hold until Geiger's manslaughter charge plays itself out in court.
Belize Prime Minister Dean Barrow continues to press Guatemala to sign the protocol that governs the movement of people along the Sastun River, which forms the country's southern boundary with Guatemala. In 2015, representatives of both countries met in Istanbul, Turkey, to hammer out an agreement, but that has not materialized. Despite a concerted effort by the Organization of American States, the OAS, and other regional organizations, Guatemala hasn't been persuaded to sign an agreement. Prime Minister Dean Barrow, speaking to reporters, said that the Guatemalans are in fact poking a finger in the eye of the OAS and other international organizations.
Constant reminders, the constant push that in being intransigent, they are in fact poking a finger in the eye of the OAS and of other international organizations, is something that Belize continues to maintain. The foreign minister will tell you that there is a Belize-Guatemala commission, and again, you cannot have a meeting of the commission without our side saying to the Guatemalans, you need to sign the damn protocol.
Guatemala and Belize have a long-running border dispute which is likely to go before the International Court of Justice for resolution. A referendum is scheduled for April 10th next year for voters to determine whether the territorial dispute should go before the court. The opposition has called for a postponement until after the 2020 general elections, but Prime Minister Barrow says there will be no delay.
The arguments for postponement, as I understood them, are that April 10th, 2019 is too close to November 2020. And to hold the referendum as scheduled would somehow contaminate it with partisan electoral campaigning for 2020. But unless there's a deliberate PUP plan to do that, to have that happen, the year and a half between April 10th, 2019 and November 2020 would surely provide enough of a firewall distance between the two events.
And ahead in Newsline Sport, the West Indies captain laments his side's batting meltdown in the fourth ODI against India. Stay with us. Sport is next.
This hurricane tip comes to you, compliments the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and the Caribbean Media Corporation. Be prepared. Keep a very good supply of garbage bags.
Barbados, renowned for its pristine beachfront and fantastic weather, continues to leave quite an impression on newcomers to the island and returning visitors. The Caribbean island, Quite popular as a vacation hotspot, is not only beautiful due to its natural aesthetics, the island of Barbados continues to grow in popularity because of unique connections developed with our people, our culture. We can't wait to welcome you.
If you were to look deeply into the scriptures, and if you had a crystal ball, how do you help people understand that these deadly sins, I mean, somebody can look at all of us here, right? And I can say wrath and something I have to deal with, okay? But the truth is, we all have them, all seven.
A disappointed West Indies captain Jason Holder has lamented his side's batting meltdown in the fourth one-day international of the five-match series against India. He said it was unfortunate, especially coming on the heels of superb performances in the first three matches. The Windies suffered a record 224-run defeat to India at Brabourne Stadium on Monday after they were dismissed for 154 in pursuit of a massive 378. India now lead the series 2-1. Holder said the Caribbean side has not given up hope of at least squaring the series now.
The two runners up front really didn't help us, set us back quite early, two of our better players, and then we just never really got any momentum in the middle. Credit to India, thought they bowled reasonably well up front and it caused trouble. It's just a matter of being a bit more consistent. You've got to take a gamble up front to get their wickets. I reckon if you get their wickets, you're always in with a shout. Obviously quality players, and put some pressure more in their middle to lower half, who probably hasn't been tested as much as the top order has been in this series so far. So, cricket's played on the day. We just go out there to play a clinical game of cricket. It just didn't come off today. And hopefully guys can regroup in the next couple of days and come back stronger.
Still in cricket, last year they narrowly missed out on a semi-final spot in the regional Super 50, and the previous year went down in the final to Barbados. They are seven-time champions but have not won a regional 50 overs title in 7 years. And the Jamaica Scorpions are reflecting on their performance in the just concluded tournament, in which they lost to Guyana Jaguars by 1 wicket to miss out on a spot in the semi-finals. TVJ's Daniel Blake has that story.
3 regional Super 50 tournaments, 3 different stages under head coach Robert Samuels, but the story is the same: no title. Samuels helped the team to a final in 2017, missed the last 4 by a point earlier this year before losing to Guyana Jaguars in the semi-final last week. On the surface, the results may look good, but deep down expectations were high. But will it be 3 strikes and you're out for Samuels?
Listen, I tell people that I'm doing a job for my country. I've always done a job for my country, and if my job is based off winning championships, then it will be a little bit pressuring, and I don't want to know that my job is based off winning championships. Yes, as a coach, you want to be winning championships, but winning championships takes time. I have a 3-year, 4-year plan, and that is how you win championship, by building teams. This is just the 2nd season that I've been coaching this team.
According to Captain Nikita Miller, the team may have shot themselves in the foot, having made 4 changes to their team that started the tournament on a high. Chris Gale, Rovman Powell, Fabian Allen and O'Shane Thomas all left the Scorpion squad due to other commitments.
Listen, when you're in a team situation where you especially in a tournament, and you keep changing, personnel, it's a bit difficult. CC, as I spoke about, they really didn't have any changes. Guyana probably only had one change to their entire tournament. So it's kind of difficult. We had a lot of changes throughout the tournament, and it kind of offset us a bit.
Only 2 centuries were scored by Scorpion players, one from Gale and the other from Jermaine Blackwood.
It was pretty decent. I went over there with the expectation to score about somewhere 450 to 500. I felt like 100 and something behind that, make over 320 runs. Pretty decent tournament for me, but I think I could do much better.
One revelation for the Jamaican franchise throughout the tournament was Seema Gordon-Bryan, whose participation ended with the final over against the Jaguars.
Kind of a pressure situation. Well, I tried to bowl my best delivery, but it didn't work out. Well, it's a good experience. I take away some good points where I've noticed that I hitting the pitch a bit regular and getting the ball to swing even more.
The local contingent will now turn their attention to the local elite league with the 4-day professional cricket league, their next regional assignment.
A 20-man squad has been chosen to represent Guyana in a CONCACAF Under-20 Championship in the United States. Isan Griffith has that story.
Under-20 team will depart on Wednesday for Florida for the CONCACAF Under-20 Men's Championships. After weeks of training, the selectors led by head coach Wayne Dover has selected a 20-man squad to represent Guyana at the CONCACAF Championship from November 1st to the 22nd. The squad includes 8 international-based players and will be captained by Jeremy Garrett, who is on studies overseas. Guyana will play against some of the top countries such as Guatemala, Cayman Islands, Curacao, El Salvador in the championships.
We saw the likes of Guatemala, El Salvador, Curacao, who has been steadily progressing as a giant in the region, and Cayman Island. But we always approach every game with a level of seriousness. We never take anyone for granted, regardless the status, whether they may know or they one of the bigger teams. But like I said, once we could get the group organized and fit and playing the way we want them to play to make these games competitive, then we could possibly grind out the results. And that is not impossible in the world of football. We saw at many stages, many levels in football, the main out teams them triumph and come out of groups, and we're aiming to see how best we could be one of those teams who could come out of a group with some of the heavyweights.
And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Come and experience exceptional fun. Meet amazing people. Enjoy fantastic food and rock the nights away to world-class music at the 23rd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival. 3 nights of musical entertainment from the 27th to the 29th of June 2019. Book now and save the date. For more information, log on to stkittsmusicfestival.net. St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other.
Again, the major developments of this day, Liad proposes salary freeze among measures to put the airline on a sustainable path. And in sport, West Indies captain Jason Holder laments his side's batting meltdown in the 4th ODI against India. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to CarnaNews.com. For more of our programming, log on to CaribVision.tv and check us out on our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a good night.